Today we have part 2 of the Thypoch Simera 35 1.4 video and giving you everything you need to know if you're looking to buy this lens. If you missed part 1, I spent 4 days shooting over 3,000 images with this lens on my Leica M10, Leica M240 and Leica M4P. And in this video I'm going to give you side-by-side comparison tests, slides, sample photos, all the information you need. So hopefully by the end you'll be in a better position whether or not you're looking to upgrade to this lens or whether you're happy with the lens you've already got. Let's jump into the video. Hello, welcome. Matt here from MrLeica.com. So today we're looking at brand new lenses for Leica from the company Thypoch. Thypoch meaning your fixed point, Simera meaning today. Let's first look at the unique features of the Thypoch 35 1.4. The first thing you're going to notice, it does have a deep rear element, which means it's going to be better on cameras with a thinner focus stack, such as Leica M cameras. Otherwise, if you're using something like a Sony, you're going to get softer edges from my reading. The 35mm lens is supplied with a very nice metal rectangular vented lens hood, but it does make the lens slightly front heavy and obviously slightly bigger, as with any hood. I found that I preferred to use the lens without the hood, and then the lens isn't front heavy. As you can see from this image, the lens balances nicely on an M camera without the hood attached. Luckily, the lens is also supplied with a push-on round cap too. In terms of size, here you can see the size difference next to some of my other fast 35mm lenses. The other two lenses are 35 f2. And here you can see the viewfinder blockage with the hood attached, and then the hood not attached looking through my Leica M10 camera. The optical formula is 9 elements in 5 groups, including an spherical element and a floating group. And this lens has 14 rounded aperture blades, as we'll see more of as we get into the video. The lens starts with third stop aperture clicks until f4, then it goes to half stop, then it goes to full stops, so that's slightly strange. If you plan to use this lens for video, you can declick it by moving the switch from the circle to the moon. That's a nice feature if you want silent use. And this lens has a vintage style focus tab and infinity lock. Perhaps not ideal if you work close to infinity. You have a close focus distance of 0.45 meters, 1.5 feet, and a soft stop at 0.7 meters for rangefinder users. This lens has quite an unusual depth of field scale, using little red dots instead of the normal lines that you'd see in the bottom right on, say, a Leica camera for doing zone focusing. You may recognise this design from the Alpha 50 1.9 lens as seen in these photos. Size-wise, it's biggish for an M mount lens, and it's around the same size as a 1.4 50mm Summilux as seen here. If you get this lens in black, it perfectly matches my black M10, M6 and M4P, and you can also get the lens in silver too. Okay, with the lens spec out the way, now let's take a look at some sample photos and do a deep dive on how good this lens really is. First, starting with colour. Actually, before we do that, a huge thanks to my amazing patrons. Links below to more content. Okay, yes, onto the photos. So these photos were all shot on my 4 days in Valencia. See part 1 if you missed that. Most of the images I'm going to share will be shot with my Leica M10, but I will include a few with my Leica M242 for those that use the Leica M240. I have included raw photos and then raw plus preset to give you an idea of how the finished photo will look, and then obviously the unedited photos straight out of camera. I think it's important to show what's possible by adding your preset or adding my preset in this case, because obviously we're not used to seeing raw photos posted on, say, Instagram. Raw photos are more flat and bland, where with a preset you get a bit more pop. These presets that I'm designing for my new M10 I will make available in the coming weeks, hopefully. I'm still fine-tuning them for my own needs, and then once I'm happy for myself I can make them available to others. If you're new here, I can put links below to my various camera presets. Okay, onto Boker. So this is the 35 1.4 lens. So how good is the Boker? Because it focuses at 0.45 centimeters, getting that bit close allows you to get slightly bigger bokeh balls. And as you can see in these sample photos, it is quite pleasing and very smooth. It's cat-eye at the edges and circular in the center, as you'll see with many lenses. And I quite like that aspect for, say, portraits. Here's a normal portrait at a normal distance, and then if you zoom in, you can see the nice bokeh detail in the background. Sunstars. This lens is extremely good for sunstars because it's got the 14 rounded aperture blades. Here you can see the sunstars at different f-stops, and if you stop this lens down, you can get some super pointy sunstars. Lens flare. If you noticed in some of the Sunstar photos, there was some flare, and with me shooting my portraits often backlit, often with low sun at this time of year, this is recorded in January, flare is a problem despite what some of the other reviews are saying, where they say there's no flare issues. There is flare issues if you point the lens at the sun, but if you use a lens in kind of normal conditions with the sun high in the sky, you don't really see any problems being a multi-coated lens. I'll show you examples there with and without flare so you can see the difference depending on if I'm using my hand to block the sun. Okay, halation. This is more of a film term, but how much glow do you get from points of light? As you can see from these photos, you do get a bit of halation, that cine stillish vibe from, as you can see on this train photo, and I find it quite nice. Vignetting. So this is a fast lens, so you'd expect vignetting 1.4, but as you stop down, the vignetting clears up really quickly, and I'd say by 2.8 it's mostly gone. How does it compare to my other 35mm lenses that I often use? Wide open, it's similar at 1.4 to my other lenses at f2, but at f2 it has much less vignetting if that's your thing. Lens distortion. I did a quick test by shooting at a wall and then applied a grid over the top, and to my eyes it's pretty well corrected and not too many problems for real world use. Close focus. Don't underestimate how valuable being able to focus at 0.45 meters is compared to the standard 0.7 meters. As you saw from those two photos for the selfie, the difference is absolutely huge, and it's really useful if you want one lens that does everything. Maybe you want to do camera photos or food photos, and being able to focus at 1.5 feet just allows you to get that bit closer and have one lens that does everything rather than needing a second lens for your close-up pictures. Funny fact, this tattoo is actually a photo I took shot with a 7 Artisans 51.1 lens. Okay, sharpness. The Thypoch Simera 35mm is more than sharp enough shot to wide open for real world use. I did notice from my testing that I don't think the 1.4 is a true full stop brighter than f2, but let me know in the comments if you've seen anything like that. First I did a center sharpness test by taking a crop. It's sharp enough wide open at 1.4 but does improve slightly as you stop down. What about corner sharpness? So again, I did a crop, and again it's not terrible in the corners, but it does improve from kind of 2.8 onwards. Here is a sharpness test at 0.45 meters. With a crop in, you can see sharpness is good at pretty much all f-stops. Okay, black and white photos. As mentioned, I had my Leica M10 and my older Leica M240 camera with me, and once I killed my batteries on my M10, I used my M240. As I was using a 35mm lens, and they're normally quite popular for street photography, I tried to do some hip shooting street photography as I walked back towards the apartment. All these photos are shot from the hip with my Leica M240 at ISO 800, but they look like they're shot at 6400 or something. They look much more grainy than I would normally expect. Also, sorry for the dirty sensor. I don't normally see it when I shoot my wide aperture portraits. These images were shot with my Leica M10, and as you can see, raw, and then the impact of adding a high contrast black and white preset. You can make your own or download the ones that I make. I also have my camera set to black and white preview mode, and so I can pre-visualize the final image before taking the picture. I will need to send in my M10 for a service. You can see I'm clipping the shutter at 0.004 of a second. Feel free to check out part 1 for more of my black and white final images. Okay, what about alternatives to the Thypoch Simera 35 1.4? You got the new Leica Sumlux 35 1.4, the Zeiss Distagon 35 1.4, the Nocturne 1.5, and the Nocturne 1.2. Here you can see the price difference compared to similar lenses, and on paper the Thypoch seems to be the best value lens. Comparing some of the features, the Thypoch focuses almost as close to the Leica lens, it's got the most aperture blades, and it's the second lightest. Okay, so what is the verdict? I think for fellow Leica M shooters, the Thypoch lens is going to be an upgrade over the popular Voigtlander Nocturne 35 1.4. I think it's better corrected, and it's going to give you sharper images wide open at 1.4. The main drawback is the size compared to the tiny Nocturne. If you want best in class, get the new Sumlux lens, and if you don't mind the size and want great sharpness, get the Zeiss Distagon 1.4. Personally, I prefer smaller lenses, so I often use f2 lenses. I use the Voigtlander Ultron 35 f2, which if you see the video at the end performs really well to other 35mm lenses, and then I also use a tiny Light Lens Lab 35 f2 8-element collapsible. Here you can see the vignetting of all three lenses side by side at f2, and here you can see the sharpness, and I'd say the Thypoch is similar to the Ultron. My next lens to test is the Thypoch Simera 28mm 1.4. Hit subscribe so not to miss that, and see more 35mm lens reviews next.